Hello everybody, welcome back to the Advanced Vape channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the VCMT2 by VAPERZ Cloud. So this is the same company that obviously made the VCMT and made the VCST, and they've made a whole bunch of drippers like the Buddha. If you guys have watched my channel for a while, you know that I really liked the 30mm VCST. I didn't try the original VCMT, but that was very much a hate it or love it kind of tank, and most people had some kind of problem with it. So this tank is completely different than the original VCMT, and that stands for VAPERZ Cloud Mega Tank. So I've had a few issues with this tank, and I'll talk about that, but they're not the same issues that people had with the original VCMT, so I'm really not going to compare the two at all, because to me they're just totally different. So here's the tank with the Bubble Ultim tank on there. It comes with a normal glass in there. I didn't like the normal glass too much, but I like the bubble glass on there. It gives quite a bit of capacity. So got your normal top fill, airflow, and nothing real special about that. There's not much of a lip to grab on here to take the tank apart, but you can just get a hold of it. And I'm going to take the glass off so that you can see a little bit more. Here is the barrel, and it can rotate on there, which is, I guess, supposed to be juice flow control. And it reaches a point where you can just pull it off. There's little tracks on there that it runs along, if you see this line in here. This is the updated version, which is different than a lot of the other reviewers doing this tank in the past that I've seen. Theirs looks a little different, and it seems to be they don't have the same problem that I did. So when you're assembling this tank, you kind of just instinctively want to do it like this, where the chimney is screwed into the top. And then you put the glass on, and then try and put it on there. And there is just no way to get this tank to assemble like this. It just will not happen. You can sit there and try it all that you want. I tried it for a really long time trying to assemble like this, and it's just not going to happen. And it kind of drives me crazy. Just putting this thing together is the thing that I hate about this tank. So the only way that you can get this tank assembled is to put this on first, lock it on there all the way open, and then put the glass on and screw this on if you don't drop it. It still takes a little bit of force. There we go. Now I got it on there, and there's not anything to hold on to, so if you're not careful, it'll cut up your fingers. It makes it a little bit easier if you put this on there first, and then ratchet it down on there. But that gives you no use of that presumably juice flow control. So I've only ever had it wide open because it's too tight. The tolerances are not quite there to allow you to move it how I'm presuming they intended you to be able to move it. So just assembling this tank is a pain in the butt, for real. So let's take a look at the deck. Bottom air, big wick channels in there, and just a two-post, two-terminal design. The build deck is simple to use, really gigantic flathead screws in there, and generous airflow, and you can fit quite a bit on here. I'm going to be doing some staggered staple on there. And before I go on to put these in here, I just want to point out I've got these coils, if you're wrapping your own, I've got them to where the legs are on the same level instead of one leg being high and one low. So it's just a different technique to wrapping it to get them to be like that. And it really makes it much, much easier to install on this kind of build deck. They just kind of go straight in there instead of having to mess with it a little bit because this leg is high. So I'm going to go on and install these and then we'll go through the dry fire and wick it and everything. Okay, so really super easy to install on there. Those screws are gigantic and they're not going to have any issues. It can fit pretty big coils. These are pretty huge coils going in there, and I scooted them down close to the airflow. Not the most perfect coils I've ever made, but they should vape really nice. So I'm going to go on and go through the dry fire real fast, and then we'll talk about wicking this. Okay, so that's looking good, and now we'll go into the wicking after this cools down. So while this is cooling down, I'll talk about the wicking just a little bit. There's huge wick channels in there, and that was primarily the main problem with the original VCMT, was the wicking had issues. But the VCST was awesome as far as wicking, never any problems at all. And this seems to have a kind of somewhat similar setup on the wicking, so it just needs quite a bit of wick in there without a whole lot of fiddling with it and it being really finicky or anything. You don't have to be super careful with it. And I'm going to be using Cotton Bacon Prime on this. It can be a little bit hard getting the amount right on these coils because they're very scratchy and they've got all those little kind of gaps in there, and it pulls the cotton. So just now I pulled it through and realized that it was the totally wrong amount and had to start over. So I'm going to do the length cut at about where that O-ring is, and I'm going to fluff it out just a tiny bit. So as you can see there, I'm kind of fluffing out the legs that are on the side where there's less room. So for me, it's the left side. I had to put it over the leg there, and I'm touching it from the back side to make sure that it's kind of clogging the whole area. You don't want there to be a big gap on the underside where it can get close to that airflow. So really I just kind of packed it in there and not doing anything super finicky with it. And this might actually be on the side of not quite enough cotton in there. So really, really efficient at wicking. Okay, and now we put this chimney on, glass, and struggle with assembling this again. Okay, putting it together the way that makes it easier, it's not like impossible, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you're trying to adjust your wicking or you need to re-wick it and you're trying to access it repeatedly. It's just, it gets to be a pain. And trying to put it on the other way where I mentioned where the chimney and this is connected, it's not going to happen. So I might have wicked it just a little bit too light, but we will see. I'm going to have this with the airflow all the way open at 125 watts. So one thing you notice when you go to vape on it is that it's super loud. It has a kind of loud, raspy, turbulent noise to it. It's just super duper loud. I think I probably wicked it just a little bit too light. If I was doing it over again, I would make it make those legs just a little bit more dense and longer. This thing is super efficient at wicking, so you can pretty much stuff the cotton in there. Even if you're trying to get it to wick fast with a big staple coil in there like I have, it's going to keep up. So you don't want it to wick too fast. And yeah, so I would go with just a little bit more cotton. I don't think that it's going to leak the way that I have it on there, but on re-wicking I would add just a little bit more on there. Flavor and performance is actually really good on this tank. I think that it's better than the VCST as far as flavor goes. Really happy with the flavor notes that come through on it with all of the builds that I've tried on there. So really love the actual performance of it. But I'm just kind of frustrated by assembling the tank like I talked about. Overall, it's a really good tank. I'm happy with it. It's just one of those tanks that's hard to get at the build inside there. So you're going to lose whatever juice you have in there. You need to pour it out if you're going to access it. And it's just kind of a pain in the butt if you're trying to get at it over and over again. The flavor, though, it makes up for those issues. It really brings out a lot of the juices that I enjoy and kind of go to for testing staple type builds. I've used it continuously, and I've tried my best to not re-wick it very often just because of the assembly thing. Overall, though, I'm happy with this tank, and I saw that they came out in the same way that they did with the VCST. They came out with a 25 millimeter, which is what this is, a 30 millimeter, and a 36, which is those are the same sizes that the VCST did. So I'm really interested to try the 30 millimeter size, but I don't have that now. These tanks are a little bit on the expensive side. I think this was somewhere around $70 is what I paid for it, which is kind of on par for VAPERZ Cloud tanks. So I think if you're a fan of VAPERZ Cloud tanks, or you just want a good flavor tank, and you can look past the assembly issue, if that's not a big deal to you, it's definitely worth checking out. I really enjoy the flavor and performance off of it. So that'll bring us to the end of this video about the VCMT2 by VAPERZ Cloud. If you like this video on our channel, give us a like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions, leave them below in the comments or send me an email. Thanks.